talking and
Okay,
then
no
you
problem.
know. All right, we are live. Welcome back to Exposing Sierra Leone, a collaboration between Sierra Leoneans Killing It and Authentic African, where we talk about things going on in Sierra Leone, the Sierra Leone diaspora, and what will be affecting us in the future of our people. So today we're going to talk about what it's like to have unsupportive African parents when you have a non-traditional career. We have a couple of special guests that'll be joining us today who have taken non-traditional career routes. And so what that's been like for them, they're going to tell their stories. Admire has her own story. I have my own story. So we're going to share all of that. But before we even get into everything, those of you who are new to the live, I think maybe me and Admire can both do some quick introductions. I'll turn it over to Admire. You can introduce yourself first, and then I'll introduce myself after.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Admire. I am an entrepreneur and a licensed braider located in Houston, Texas. So if you are watching the live from Houston, or if you know somebody who lives in Houston, tell them that there's a braider out here. I'm also the founder of Sierra Leoneans Killing It, the page where we highlight Sierra Leoneans who are positively killing it in our community. And yeah.
Nice. And I am Joe Hatagwa. I am an American-born Sierra Leonean. Lived for 4 years on the continent of Africa, a little over 2.5 years in Ghana, and a little over a year or so in Sierra Leone. I am, the founder of Authentic African. It's a platform that's meant to bridge the gap between Africans and diasporans, so we understand more about each other. We can all further what we're doing as a collective nation of Black Africans, diaspora, and on the continent. I also am an advisor to help people want to move to the continent, want to start a business there, and want to invest. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. I also have a non-traditional career as someone who has been focused on content creation and as an entrepreneur. So I think it's perfect that Admire and I both have this conversation, but also the guests that we were having joining us as well. But before we do, I think it makes sense to give some context. When you think about African parents, even Asian parents are similar, right? It's like doctor, lawyer, engineer. Those are the three main careers that are acceptable, and other healthcare fields are acceptable as well. So when I was in high school, I got my nurse's aide license at 17. So I was already on that path. And so yeah, let's talk about some of the things that come up and maybe why they want to choose these careers for us and why they anticipate us joining those careers. And then we can talk about our specific stories. I think our guests are in the waiting room, so we'll bring them up in a second. Actually, maybe we should just introduce them now since we just went through our introductions. We can introduce.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep them waiting. So here is one of our guests. Welcome to the live.
Hi. Hi,
Hi
Reiki.
guys.
How
Yeah,
are
hey Ricky.
you?
How are you guys? I'm good.
Good. Thank you so
Well,
much for being a guest on here with us. We
Oh, you're welcome.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
yes, absolutely. And then we have Ibrahim as well. I'm going to bring him on.
Hi, Ibrahim.
What's up? What's up? So let's start with you, Queen Reiki. Can you do a quick introduction about yourself and what you do as a career? Admire and I just kind of briefly went through ours.
Okay.
Since we're talking about non-traditional careers, I think it'll be helpful to kind of get an understanding of what you do, so we can get to that topic in a moment.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Reiki Atsugat. I'm a Bengara, also known as maybe Reiki, maybe Rocky. Depends on how you view it or say it. I'm okay with either or. So, my non-traditional career is that I am a professional dancer, choreographer, creative director. I'm also a hairstylist, and I am a vocalist as well. So I play and dabble into a lot of things, but more specifically the dancing and performing and choreographing and creating. That's my niche.
Awesome. Creative arts. So we're definitely going to get into that. And then Ibrahim, can you talk a little bit about what you do in your non-traditional career as well?
You're mute.
Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Definitely, I don't mind. So basically, I'm a financial consultant. That's not an average career choice that most people choose in regards of helping people financially, and also I model as well. That's also not a career choice that most people, partake in, especially Africans. But I'll say as our generation evolve and our culture evolve, our parents start accepting these things. So.
Absolutely. So real quickly, I thought it'd be good to do a little bit of like context for folks as to the different careers that immigrant classes choose, and maybe even why our parents would want to push us into a specific career field. Just to give everybody context, a lot of our parents and that generation watch these lives. And so, not just to say why we disagree with their points, but also to talk about maybe why they would want us to choose these careers. And then we can go into each one of our stories, just kind of understanding what it was like for you to choose those careers and what it's been like communicating with your parents about what it is that you do, and explaining to them, because that's always been interesting for me, is trying to get them to regurgitate back what I do to them. It's never what I said, right? It's always something else. And then when you hear them talk to other people about it, that's also funny too. So really quickly, there's some specific facts that I want to go through. So the Migration Policy Institute said approximately 2.1 million African immigrants resided in the United States in 2019. That's obviously a lot more, representing 5% of the total foreign population. Compared to the total U.S. immigrant population, sub-Saharan Africans are better educated, participate in the labor force at a higher rate, and are more likely to speak English at home. And because we are one of the most upwardly mobile immigrant classes, you find that people continue to follow the same practices. And it's because we choose careers that pay better than other careers generally, right? Like doctor, lawyer, engineer. Specifically Nigerians, I know it's not specific to Sierra Leone, but there's a lot of data on Nigerians because there's so many of them. They're the most upwardly mobile immigrant class in the entire world, every country they go to, right? Because they almost always choose those careers in high numbers. There's always people who choose careers in the arts, finance, hair, and marketing, but generally they choose those kinds of careers. And so in terms of like all of the world, I have a couple more facts to go through. So 17% of Nigerian immigrant men and 34% of Nigerian immigrant women work in healthcare fields, much higher than the overall averages of other immigrants in those places. Education level, 69% of sub-Saharan African immigrants aged 25 and older in the US had at least college education, versus UK, France, Portugal, and others, like 10%, 27%, 30%, 49%. So sub-Saharan Africans are much more educated too. And again, it kind of to the same thing. If you've seen other people have the American or European dream and you've seen them move up in the immigrant class, then you want your children to do the same. And so that is why they try to force us into specific career paths. So I'm gonna leave it there. I don't want to bore people too much with the facts and the numbers, but I think it's just important to kind of understand this is kind of where it comes from. There's a reason for this. And so let's kind of get into our own individual stories. I don't know who wants to go first, but I'd be interested to hear like how you chose your career choice and what your parents said when you decided to choose it. Who wants to go first on that?
Ladies first.
I can go first because my journey it was literally a journey for me. So growing up all my life, I wanted to be an OBGYN, which is an obstetrician gynecologist, for those that don't know what the acronym stands for. And when I say from the books to the shows, like everything about me was being an OBGYN up until I went to college. So think of me like 7 years old all the way up until like my big girl age. And I actually ended up interning with an OBGYN, and I was like, okay, maybe this is not necessarily the career path for me. Not that I don't love it enough, but because it was important to me for me to be an active mom, an active wife in my children's life. And the impression that I got from that OBGYN was that you are always on call. You know, you have a certain hour once them, because babies are unpredictable. And that to me was like, oh my gosh, it crushed me, because I know that, you know, one thing that our parents didn't do for, well, and I'm gonna speak for me, my parents didn't have as much time and be as involved with the things that I wanted because they were always working. So I didn't want that for my children and my family. So I knew whatever field I needed to be or I was going to go into had to be something whereas in I could earn money, but at the same time be present for my family. So after doing that, I kind of was like, oh, I don't know if that's gonna, you know, if that's gonna work out for me anymore. I've always loved dancing, always competed as a kid. That has never stopped, but I didn't take it professionally. And I started like literally halfway through my college experience, I switched my major from biology to psychology, which was another no zone because mental health, counseling, these are all things that the African community does not like. But for me, I love the fact that I had control over my schedule, who my clients I got to pick. So in a sense, even my professional life is unconventional to the African community and Black community at large, you know. And it was so much pushback from my family. Why you want to go to why you want to do psychology? What's not psychology? What money are you gonna get from psychology? Like, I don't understand. You've been telling me, say you want to be doctor, you want to be this. I said, but I still can be a doctor. It's just a different type of doctor that I'm gonna be. Um, they did not understand it. They were so against it. I got so much negative feedback about it. And honestly, up until I graduated, it was literally me and my books. They were not happy about it. And during that time of me being an undergrad was when I started to take dance more seriously and professionally. I was a part of my school's dance team at the time, so it like gave me a lot of exposure. I joined a team during that time and started to perform all around. And that's how I really started to get my foot into the door when it came to the professional life of a dancer. And then I really, really was always super good at choreography. So even in school, some of my pieces were showcased there. And I just really, really fell in love with being a choreographer more than I did actually being a dancer. So now that, you know, I've had some experience on the stage and all this other stuff, I'm trying to take a step back from the main performer floor and just go into the backstage things of it. But I never, so I didn't grow up with my actual father in my life. So he was not a factor into, you know, rather or not he approved or didn't approve of me being a dancer or not, but my mother was. And she was not very supportive of it initially.
Sure.
And honestly, she didn't see me perform until like almost like I might want to say 3-4 years ago. That was her first time ever seeing me like actually perform and showcase my talent. You know, I think that as a whole, they just always had this negative perception of, oh, she's gonna be half naked on the stage, shaking her butt, disgracing me. And then she got to see a piece that I created and was like, oh, I was not expecting that. It was really uplifting. I understood the message because a lot of what I do has to do with like empowerment of my country, Sierra Leone, and just pushing that narrative out the window of, oh, Salon doesn't have anything better. You know, I kind of wanted to really drag that out the mud and, you know, really start to get people to see, okay, there's a lot more that we have to offer as a people. So for me, I never got the support, you know, okay, keep going, like that active support from my family. I got it mainly from outside people. And honestly, it was really my own particular drive. Like dancing for me was my escape from everything that was going on in my life and, you know, trying to get away from my reality and going into a different reality. Because when you're dancing and you're listening to music, like music takes to a different world always. And my job is just to interpret what that emotion is that I'm feeling and bring it to life through movement. And for me, it's
Got it.
been one of my greatest blessings and gifts. I mean, I have many, many, many talents, and I truly do believe that anything I set my mind to, I will accomplish. So I also do, like my sister Myra, I do hair, and it's unconventional. I mean, I would not say doing hair is unconventional for the African population,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of hairstylists. There's a lot of, they take that line of work very seriously. So I wouldn't say that
Right.
that would be the controversial thing for me. Mainly me being a therapist and a dancer and a vocalist.
Got it. Okay. And since we're sticking with the theme of women, ladies first, Admire. What about you? Your career. What was it like when you started focusing on doing hair mostly, and how did your parents take it? What was their response to that?
Just like Reiki, my dad wasn't in my life, so he didn't really care. But my mom, right when I graduated from high school, she was like telling me to go get my CNA license. My photo, I go get that because all the Sierra Leoneans in Lowell, Massachusetts, where I'm from, they're CNAs, RNs, LPNs. I thought, I go. So I went to Job Corps, got my license, took my test, got my license, and then I really didn't like it. So I told my mom, like, I don't really like these, like, and then she was like, no, you have to do this. Either this doctor, lawyer. I'm like, no. So then I just like sat and asked myself, like, what do you really want to do? I've been doing hair since I was like 15. So I was like, I don't mind doing hair. I don't braid tight. I grow people's hair. So let me just do that. I actually enjoy doing it. So I quit the nursing home where I was working at and moved to Boston from Lowell, which was a big deal for my mom. She was dramatic about it. I went to hair school, cosmetology school, graduated. Nobody showed up at my graduation. I still kept pushing.
Oh wow.
And then I ended up getting like a job at one of the biggest salons in Boston at the time. And the owner encouraged us to like travel, like go to classes, like Warner Brothers hair show and stuff like that. So I started going, and I was like, oh, I want to move. So then I ended up moving from Boston because doing hair in Boston, you don't really make money like that. So told my mom I was moving. It was a big thing. Oh, so I go, why they go? You want to go pass? Who's this plant where you want plants? Not a money not dey inside plants. Because she, at the time, like back in the day, I don't think they really respected braiding. Because the African braiding shops, it was like a second job to a lot of the people. Like, well, where I'm from in Massachusetts, they had their CNA jobs, LPN, but then they would come. That's like their second job. And the nieces, the little kids will finish the braiding. So they didn't really take it seriously as a career. So she had that same mindset. But despite that, I still kept going. I really wish that I could have told her like the celebrities I did, but she didn't really know the celebrities' hair. I mean, the celebrities whose hair I did, because she doesn't know English. My mom never went to school, so if I was to tell her I did work for Beyonce, she would have been like, "Good Andy." The only person she knows is Akon. So yeah, up until she passed away, I couldn't really be like, "Oh, Mama, I do here for Beyonce. I do something for Beyonce. Tiana Taylor. She don't know who those people were. So,
Mm, mm.
yep.
That's your story. Okay. And Ibrahim, what about you? What you're in two worlds, right? You're in the finance world and you're in modeling. So as you started that career, how did your parents respond to either one or both?
So my own situation different. I would speak more Creole because I was born there, but I'll be mixing it here and there. So where I be this, yeah. So where I be this salon, and basically now, really the average career I feel that we want make I do like I will go private school, I go Lebanese school, I go international school, like that top big school there because my papa na be entrepreneur. So he basically does business as well back home. But most of the time I grew up with my grandparents, and they were more supportive per se than my parents. So my mom decided to migrate to Gambia. Um, Around that time, that's when the war was going on, the Red War. So now we come in the U.S. So when we was in the U.S., it was kind of different because the whole environment on pursuing your own career choice. American parents are kind of like different. You know what I mean? They support their kids. Oh, you want to play basketball? Go play basketball. You want to play football? Go play football. So like when I saw that perspective, I started being more independent because my parents weren't like that. You know, they were more cultural. They were more like, you have to go to school, you have to go to college, which I'll listen. But at the same time, my perspective was the American mindset per se than the African mindset. You know, so I decided to like, you know, try sports because na salon only soccer. All my mom played football. You know, but here I decided to try something different. So like my coach at that time saw me play soccer, but he saw my height, you know. So he asked me if I could play, you know, basketball. So my mentality just started shifting because, you know, my parents wasn't really supporting that. My dad was, but my mom per se, which was in America at the time with me, she wasn't really supportive. So I told my coach to ask her. So when he did, and I started interacting with the Americans, you know, most of them, like their mentality is different, right? They achieve whatever, you know, they put their mind to. You know, even though we lack certain things, you know, as African Americans as a whole, but their mentality is kind of different than the American mentality. Our parents are more strict. They're more power motive than the Americans, whereas they are more like relaxing, but at the same time, like they they support their kids. You know, when anything they do, if they want to be gay, they can be gay. If they want to be bisexual, they can be bisexual. If they want to be whatever they want to be, a model or a drag queen or, you know, whatever they want to be, they do that. Even the celebrities nowadays, they do it. You know what I mean? So when I grew up in that atmosphere, basketball led into me like seeing the way the American parents interact with their kids because my parents never came to my basketball games. You know what I mean? Like they never came to my soccer games. You know what I mean? And that kind of like it. It's like a mental thing with Africans, especially the youth. Like it affects us mentally. You know, so we we kind of grow up as independents. Like we gain our own independence when we come here. And most youth in Africa don't see that. You know, they want to be doctors and lawyers, but the opportunity is not there. You know, and the parents over there don't really support the youth as much. They only care about politics. They only care about, you know, those little things. But look into your child's life. Like, what do they like to do? What do they want to be? Like, regardless if they want to be a lawyer, a doctor, whatever they want to be, look into it. You know, prepare them to be that. You know, so that kind of played a role into me just going after what I want to go after. So when I went to college, my parents wanted me to be a lawyer. I was like, I'll try it, but then I switched major to psychology and finance. So I did that, graduated. They wanted me to continue. I was like, no, I'm not going to continue, especially during COVID. I was like, I'm not about to continue to get my master's because the job market is not how it is. And I saw most of my peers in high school become nail techs, become lash techs, become hairstylists, become self-employed, and they're doing way better off when they started back then. And that perspective of how I grew up was like kind of the reason why I chose to go into finance, and I chose to go into modeling, not just, because it's what's popular now. No, it's because to help my community see, like, you can be self-employed. You can, make money by yourself. You can go to another country and start your own business, and you can be a model. You can work multiple things. You can be anything, so that's why we're here, to like expose that, especially for the youth, because we don't really talk about this.
Absolutely. So all of your stories are unique and interesting. The one common denominator is what we've been talking about, right? Parents not necessarily always, at least one parent, maybe not always being so supportive.
Right.
Two things I want to mention that that both Ricky and Admire had mentioned. I think one of the things that I found about hairdressers is because I used to have locks, and so I used to go to people who used to do my locks, and most of them didn't have their papers, right? It's one way to get paid under the table. And so I think that in some cases, some of those people from that generation, that's how they saw it. Like I think Admire, you had mentioned sometimes it was the second job, and for many people, if it was their first job, it's because they couldn't do other things, because it's one place you can get paid cash. And we have good dexterity in West Africa, so hair is an easy transition and a thing to do. And then what you had mentioned, Ibrahim, about your parents being like more strict than African American parents. I think one of the reasons why they'll even compare us to them is because they'll say, in our community, the more educated tend to be more upwardly mobile than Black Americans are. And so it like, although for you it showed you another way, I think a lot of times for them, they see it as the exact opposite. Like, the reason why we're so strict is because we see it happening with our cousin, our friend, whoever, because they always compare you to other people, right? They're always comparing you to other people. So I just wanted to mention that from all of your stories. My story, I'm going to keep it short. It's a long one, but I'm going to keep it short. I was born and raised in the U.S. I went to a boarding school for underprivileged kids in Pennsylvania. And so most of my peers were people who were making around the poverty line or had some kind of tragic event in their life that happened. So I grew up with kids from the trailer park and the projects, is what I always say. And so I didn't really have people who had their parents as much as they pushed us, like the Sierra Leoneans in my school or the other Africans in my school. Our parents pushed us more than I saw with other kids. So, I got my nurse's aide license when I was 17. So I became a nurse's aide far away from being a nurse's aide at this point. But I got my CNA license when I was 17 while I was in high school. Did an internship as a senior in high school, was a biology major, freshman year in college. And I actually had a mentor who was a dermatologist in Florida. She was like the #1 dermatologist. She was also like alumni of the year one year at my high school. So and her and I had a real keep it real moment. She was Asian. And so I'm trying to express to her, like, I'm in this career, but I hate it. Like, I really don't like anything that I do. First of all, being a nurse's aide you're like a glorified janitor. You're cleaning up all kinds of bodily fluids. You learn a lot about the elderly and what your body looks like once you hit a certain age. Gravity is real. Let me just tell you. So that was not something that I saw myself doing, even if I was to continue. Because my goal was, I'll start as a CNA and I'll continue as a CNA, maybe get my RN, and then go to grad school, and then I would be like the most qualified doctor coming out of my class. That's what I was thinking. But I couldn't see like that future. Like, I went to her office and she had her own practice. Her husband was her accountant. So the two of them, they made an exorbitant amount of money. I mean, it was crazy. I'd never seen anybody who made that kind of money. Just being in their house, they had wings. They had an east wing, west wing. The children had a playroom. I'd never seen anything like that before. But I still wasn't inspired to continue in this career field. And so I knew something was up, because like generally, especially like us, you see somebody with that kind of money, you're like, I want to do what they do. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. And she was like, the best thing she told me was, many of her African and her Asian friends continued going to school in those career fields because of their parents, and then regretted it later, whether it was second year of medical school, or it was their senior year in undergrad, or it was 3 years into their career. And to shift and to go into something else, you always feel like it's too late. She was like, you're still in your freshman year. you got plenty of time to make adjustments and changes. If you're sure this is not what you want to do, make the decision. And so I made the decision. I was in Florida at the time. I moved back to New York. There was lots of arguments. There was disagreements. But I decided to pursue a career. I moved to New York with $80 in my pocket. You know, lived in the projects with my aunt to pursue a whole separate career, go back to college. I had 1.6 GPA. I was on academic probation. Biology was just not for me. So many years later, I moved into another career. But that all did turn around at some point, and that's kind of what I think I wanted to ask everybody. If you had a moment where, and I think Reiki, you kind of mentioned this a bit with your mom, but what was did you have a moment where they finally understood your career and were proud of what you were doing and were okay with it? Maybe go back in the same order. Yeah, Ricky, what's up with you?
I don't. I think the turnaround was definitely we did the HBI gala.
Okay.
And it's a nonprofit organization that I'm also a part of. And I was the choreographer for the piece, and I did a freedom piece dedicating it to Sierra Leone because at the time we had just went through flooding, there was Ebola, it was just so many things going on. So I made a piece dedicating it to the tragedies that befalled Sierra Leone as far as the war. I touched briefly, and mind you, when I say touch, as in performance piece wise, I touched on the war because I was also there. I don't think I mentioned this, but I was born in Sierra Leone. I just grew up here. But yes, I touched on the actual war that happened. I touched on Ebola. I touched on the mining issues, like all through performance and art. And my mom was present for that particular piece. And she came to me and she was like, I never knew that this is what you did. And I think in that moment she learned to appreciate it. But at the same time, it's still not her preferred for me,
Sure.
In her mind, her whole thing is, oh, she does this for fun. And I think that sometimes she fails to understand that it's beyond fun. You can pass a whole message. You can inspire nations, children to do more through dance. Annually, every year, I've done a piece dedicated to the independence of Salone, be it good, be it bad, and weirdly enough, those are some of my pieces that actually do go viral and hit, around countries, that if people that see these things. And even of recently, this past Independence Day, I did a piece that outlined a couple of, our tribal, cultural aspects. And it got to a point where even my aunts were calling me, oh, I saw them post you inside with group. I don't tell us that I'm picking that day. So it's like all these ways that, I'm trying to find to incorporate not only art, but to also pass the message. And I think that once our parents actually start to realize that, okay, yes, creative arts is fun. We love it. It takes us away from ourselves, but it's also a very powerful way of getting your voice out. And for those that have ever seen my piece, those that have been around me, Admire, has been around me for quite some time now. So she knows my work. And I'm big on having a message. I don't just want to dance just to dance. I need you to understand why I'm dancing. I'm very selective of the songs that I choose. I'm selective of the types of dance styles that I choose. And while I do have like a vast array of experience when it comes to different genres of dance, I still want to hone in on my cultural, my traditional aspects of things, and not necessarily go with the flow with how, the dance industry has gone thus far. Don't get me started. That's a whole other podcast for a different day. But I don't know if my mother, to answer the question, I'm not entirely sure if she's proud that I dance. But of recently, she's happy that, you know, people see that I've done culture piece. She's the one that actually helped me. I took all the clothes from her closet to do the to do the tribal piece. So in some ways, I guess she's a bit more open now than she was when I was younger. She's still not a fan of when I do have to dress a little raunchy, but she's gonna have to suck it up. I'm an adult.
All right. And so, Maya, I mean, I know, you know, we've talked about this, you know, separately, but for you, you know, what, if at all, was there any agreement or understanding, you know, were you able to get to that with your mom? With your career?
I know when I had my salon in Atlanta, she was happy about it, but I ended up losing it, and then she passed away. So sorry, guys. So I don't know. I don't know if she was like proud.
Sorry. I know it's tough. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to lose parents, and so that's a tough topic. And then also it is also tough to not know if your parents really support what it is that you do, right? I mean, this is something that you're passionate about. You've decided to take it on as part of your identity, right? I mean, we are not necessarily what we do, but it's part of our identity. You know, people recognize you for the things that you produce. And so it is difficult when, you know, your parents don't always support it, what you do, and it makes it harder to do it, right? You want to have a partner, especially people who are a little older than you, who know you, to kind of help you through it. Ibrahim, for you, you know, your father, you said, was an entrepreneur, but he also wasn't here. Your mom was here with you. So what about you? As you built your career, have you seen you know, your parents come around to what it is that you do?
That's a really good question because I'm also a parent myself, and I always look at it in another perspective. Like we're humans. We don't really know everything, right? We learn as we go. You know what I mean? So we can't really blame too much blame our parents for not knowing, you know, how to really, you know, raise us, especially coming to a whole nother country. We can't really blame them, you know. And as I go through this journey, like, I'm new to parenthood as well. Um, they, as life go on, our parents, like, we learn each other. You know, you won't fully understand someone until life goes on. People change, people evolve. So whatever their situation that they had going on can affect our life as well, right? And I say that because as a parent, you know, we always want the best for our kids, but also we don't really look into our own life to try to fix it first before we, you know, dictate what our kids should do with their life. You know what I mean? So that's where the misunderstanding comes in. Like, if we mainly fix ourselves, you know, as parents, you know, we'll be we can better understand our kids and what they want to do and give them advice. Because my dad may have been in my life and is an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean he knows how to be an entrepreneur in America, right? And that doesn't mean he knows how to raise me in America, right? So, as my mom being here with me, her perspective is different, right? She's adapting to the culture, right? So she's raising me based off of her own knowledge that she's getting while she's fixing her own life. You know what I mean? So I always tell parents, you know, especially us now, because we're gonna be, you know, the future parents. You know, I tell other parents like myself to just try your best to fix yourself, right? And then you can give advice to your kids. If you don't know how to, you know, if you don't know how to be submissive, or if you don't know how to, you know, raise a child, if you're just too dependent on other people and on your child, you won't really know how to raise your child. You know what I mean? And when my mom came here, that's what I saw, because she really didn't know nothing about credit. She really didn't know nothing about finance. She didn't really know nothing about basketball, don't know nothing about football. People had to tell her, like, hey, your son can do this. You know what I mean? Your son can play basketball. Your son can model. You know, your son can do this, but she's thinking about how he's going to provide for me instead of how can I, you know, provide for myself and be an assistant to him. You know what I mean? And that's where we us as youth, we become so dependent on ourselves, right? And we try to find what works, what brings us money, what life is tough. You know, we have to figure this out, you know what I mean? And when our parents come here, they don't really know much, or when they're in Africa, they don't really know much. So um, that's where the misunderstanding comes from, the cultural shift, the lack of knowledge, you know, and also just working on ourselves. Like white people, I mean, Caucasians do that all the time. They have family meetings. I've never had a family meeting in my family a day in my life. You know, so like that cultural thing, it's not just Africans, it's African Americans too. I mean, some of them do have family meetings because that's what's incorporated in America. You know, some of them do tell their kids to, you know, open a business, or, you know, do what you want to do, like do hair, do nails, do what you want to do. I'm going to be supportive. Sometimes I go to casting calls and I see parents right there with their kids, literally. And you know, I tell the mother of my child, like, I want my child to model. I want her to act. I want her to do whatever she want to do. But she's gonna listen to her mom. But her mom and my mom aren't the best choice to go to. You know what I mean? So we have to fix ourselves and know what we want for ourselves and our family. You know, and you know, sometimes we gotta look at other cultures, look at the Chinese, look at the Caucasians, and really take those, you know, values and those morals and incorporate it in our own community.
Yeah, I would say, and I think both you two kind of mentioned a couple of things that I wanted to like pick up on. Like, you know, Reiki, you were talking about how they were sharing your content in a group chat. I think that was something when I started doing content on Sierra Leone, and you know, different chats, people were seeing that stuff, and I think I was made mention, like it was mentioned to me. I think that was a point of like recognition. And you know, and Ibrahim, you had mentioned that you know, the parents want the best for your kids, but they don't always know what's best.
Right.
They may want the best, but don't always know what's best. And I think a lot of times you see it's hard to describe the impact on a person through their life when they don't have that level of support, you know, especially if you're in a place where you find that other people have that support. Ibrahim, you were talking about, you saw other people who have that kind of support, right? At casting calls, you mentioned seeing parents there. You know, if you're in an athletic event, you know, people are like waving to their parents in the stands. Yours aren't there. You know, they don't necessarily
Only
know.
at graduations. They go to graduation.
They go to graduations for sure. Still out of graduation. Yeah, that's true.
And I think it's important to also mention or highlight the fact that communication styles are different. Yeah. And the types of supports are different. Like what I probably wanted, what Admire wants, what Ibrahim wants, or what you want, Joe, could be completely different. And I think that's where that communication piece comes into play. You won't know what a child needs until you actually have conversations with them. Me being a therapist, me now in grad school to become a speech and language pathologist, these are all things and modes that I'm, you know, studying or I have studied. And for me, I strongly believe in communication. It saves lives, it saves disappointment, it sets expectations, standards. And I feel that one thing that our parents lacked was that ability to communicate with us, because they didn't see that from where they were coming from. They didn't have those conversations with their parents. They just were told what to do, never really explained why you have to do this. What's this? What's that? Don't get me wrong. I love my culture and how we respect our elders. But me personally, I'm okay, and I'm more than comfortable with the kid questioning me. Like, why? Why do I have to do this?
Right.
I'm the African auntie. I'm the mom that is like, okay, please ask me these questions so I can answer them and you have an understanding. Because once there's an understanding, then you'll be like, oh, okay, I see why my mom said no, don't do this. And me, I'm the type of parent that I will let you. It's okay, go make your mistake because maybe that's what you need to learn from. I can tell you all day long that this is going to be bad for you, but at the end of the day, you have to go through life, and experience is sometimes the best teacher. Those that are wise will learn from, you know, others' experience, but at the end of the day, it's what makes you unique to yourself. And I think that our parents lack that ability to communicate, that ability to sit down and have conversations. It's not something that is a thing in Salon community or African communities at large, you know. It's pretty much, oh, I'm the mom, I'm the dad. You have to do what I have to do. Even for those that aren't present, like I'm working on my relationship with my father now, and it's so challenging because he has this mentality that, well, I'm your father. It doesn't matter if I was there or not there. And I'm just like, yeah, actually it does matter because I'm a whole person who you need to get to know, and you don't know me and I don't know you. So it's kind of like this tiptoeing event, whereas then sometimes we're okay and then sometimes we're not. But I think at the core of it, and this is just with any form of relationship, communication is key.
Yeah.
I agree.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, and I think in our world, right, children are to be seen, not heard, right? That statement, when I first heard that in America, I was like, oh, that's so true.
I do not
I had never
like
heard it.
that.
I never heard it at home, but I heard it in America, and I was like, oh, that's what I feel like. That's, you know, like, and you know what I always said. My parents were more like, they were like guidance counselors, like, and not even that. I mean, these are specific careers, but it wasn't like we had an emotional relationship. It was very much like not transactional, but maybe it was like communication was one way, right? And it was like, yes, mom, yes, dad, back, you know. And it was like, you know, you were either the remote control. Exactly. Exactly. So when it comes to choosing a career, it's also challenging. And I can briefly tell my story too. So, you know, I kind of did a roundabout all kinds of different careers. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've also gone through ebbs and flows in life and just decisions that I've made. And, you know, I think there was a time when I work in online advertising. That's like my day job was. And so like, that just sounds like esoteric, like something out in the air. Like, what does that mean? And so I remember one time my mom came to my office where I work, and she's like, oh, you really have like a job. This is for real. And it was the first time she was like, oh, this is a real thing. It was like, there was people there. I had a boss. There was like coworkers. There was like a whole office. They had a whole floor in a building. And it was interesting to see just like her response to that. Like, oh, this is, so she kind of got it, but it still was like, it was just a bunch of computers. So she still wasn't like, what is that you do? It wasn't until I worked at Hulu. I worked at Hulu for 4 years. And then that's easy to say, right? I could say, my son works at Hulu, right? You may not understand what he does at Hulu or what it is or what it means, but like he works there. So it's like a company that I recognize. And I noticed that was easier to discuss and describe to people. And then when I started doing content, that's like a whole nother thing, right? That just seems like, what is that? Especially when I left a full-time career to pursue it full-time in Sierra Leone. I think that's very scary to anyone, especially in my world. And so there was a lot of confusion and discussions about it. Questions about when I was going back to getting a full-time job, a real job kind of thing. Conversations with other people who I know ended up mentioning it to me, you know. And so, you know, it's a strange place to be in when you choose a career that's not easily definable and explained to others. Because I do think a lot of parents, part of their identity is how their children perform, right? They get blamed if their children do poorly, and they get the praise if their children do well, regardless of how involved they were a part of it. It's just part of how it is. And our name means so much to us in Africa, and most of West Africa. I can't speak about East and Southern Africa, but it's pretty much the same for people that I know. And it's like, it's your name. It's like, it's bringing pride and proudness to the family name and to you as an individual because of how well you did as a parent, right? And so you want to brag about your children. you know? And so I think when you choose a non-traditional career, it's hard to brag because other people judge as well, right? There's this other element of like, oh, it's speaking no vete, right? So, you know, like what job are they doing? So I do understand it, right? You know, it's like, I want to be the voice for those parents where they have their viewpoints and why they do. And I understand it. It can be damaging and it's not necessarily helpful. Okay.
I wish
So
that
go ahead, go ahead.
I wish that the narrative behind that would kind of flip, not necessarily their job and what we do as individuals, but more so our character. Like, who
Right.
are you as a person?
Right.
I think that if parents start to look at parenthood as defined by your child's character
Right.
and not what they do, that sense of pride will shift. That
Yeah.
sense of, joy will shift, because it's like, okay, did you raise a well respectful human being? Is this person someone that you can take to the younger people and they be a model for them? And don't get me wrong, we all have our flaws in certain areas. I'm not far from the word perfect, far
Sure.
from it. But overall, at the core of me, what are my principles? What are my values? Do I exemplify a human being that, and I'm spiritual, so I'm gonna go there. Do you exemplify a being that glorifies what God put into you? So I think that once parents and just people as a whole start to shift that narrative of, oh, let me associate with this person because they're so person, versus, oh, let me associate with this person because he's kind-hearted, he's a gentleman, or she's respectful, or she's a very helpful human being, it'll change that narrative, that perspective of job titles. Because honestly, it's not what it's cracked out to be, because the market, and I hope COVID showed a lot of parents that it doesn't matter. You can lose your job wherever you are,
even if you have a master's, like.
And look, just like how Ibrahim said, a lot of people that were doing big jobs ended up coming back into the creative arts field because that was what was available at the time for people to actually prosper and grow. That was what really made the turnaround for me in the dance industry, which I'm not as exactly proud of, but a lot of people now are dancers. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
all
to
true.
Piggyback off of that, I know we're about to wrap up. Basically, she's right. Like I said before, we have to work on ourselves and know what we want to be and who we want to become. And I can relate with everyone here. Because we're all Sierra Leoneans and with other Africans as well. Coming here to find yourself it's not easy. Our parents always want us to do the best, but that's probably not the best for you. You know what I mean? So it's better off to find yourself and have those morals and values and inspire the younger generation, inspire your nieces, your nephews, your kids to, do whatever you want to do as long as you can make money off of it and that skill and that niche, just do it. The world is evolving. This is not 1980 or 1990. And our parents just need to understand.
At all.
And technology is improving. Our kids are getting smarter. Like my daughter is so smart. I'm like, you can read? I'm like, you can read this whole book. I couldn't even read this whole book when I was in Africa. You know what I mean? Because we didn't have that. We didn't have an iPad or we didn't have a tablet. I bought her an iPad. She can read everything on that Kindle. So, all that, you just have to adapt to that and change yourself and then put that moral and value into your kids so they can do what they want to do, not tell them what they want to do.
Well put. I think you guys both made some excellent points. So I'm not going to add any more except to say, where can those watching find you guys? Let's start with you, Reiki. How can they find you online, your work that you're doing, and how can they follow you?
So right now, I can be found on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm not as active because, like I said, I'm in graduate school right now. But every once in a blue moon, I'll pop pop in. Hopefully, you know, in the next couple of months, you'll see me a little more frequently. But I am on socials. On Instagram, you can find me at queen.raki. Queen is spelled exactly the way it's supposed to be, Queen. I don't have no extra curricular activities. And from my Instagram, you can literally find all my other sites and whatnot. I also have my other pages, the one for my hair, the one for my professional life, all of that is on my Instagram page. So if you do not have it already, go ahead and follow me, QUEEN.RAKI. And on my Instagram, you'll be able to hit my Twitter and every other thing associated with me.
Excellent. So check her out, follow, and subscribe, and like, do all the things. Ibrahim, what about you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on every single social media platform except for YouTube. I can't get into YouTube. I don't know why.
No
So you
idea.
can find Instagram at Ibrahim B. Williams. You can find me on TikTok at Ibrahim B. Williams. Usually those pages are for modeling and, you know, what I do as a creator and as a professional. You can find my business at Miracle Tax and Credit Services on Instagram, and on TikTok, Miracle Financial Enterprise, on Google, Miracle Financial Enterprise. I have reviews. I help my community. You know, I like having these discussions so we can be more knowledgeable, because they don't teach these in school or within our community. So I like providing financial advice and talk about things like that. So you can find me on all of those social media platforms.
Awesome. And Maya, do you want to plug your pages real quick?
Yeah, my personal page is She Is Admire, and in the bio, my pages are there. So yeah.
Like, follow,
And thank you
subscribe.
guys. Yes, like, follow, subscribe, and thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes,
For
thank you too. I'll real quickly just do my plug real quick. For those who don't know, platform's Authentic African. I'm across all platforms. It's a little bit different on each platform because Authentic African was taken, but Authentic_African on Instagram, Authentic African on YouTube. I'm on TikTok, Twitch, everything, all the platforms. I'm across all of them. My content is all about basically bridging the gap between the diaspora and the continent of Africa. We talk about news, history, art, culture, politics. And also I want to shout out Sierra Leone's Killing with Admire what she does, because our country does not get enough light shined on the folks from our country.
Let's go.
So, you know, the first time Admire reached out to me, I think it was 2019 during the pandemic, 2020 during the pandemic. And, you know, obviously been following the page for a while now. And, you know, the support that she does for our country is amazing, which is why we wanted to do this, right? Which is why I wanted to come together with her and do these weekly. So we do plan to be back weekly, and we'll have conversations like this. We'll have other conversations. We're going to have conversations about financial literacy. We're going to have conversations about, you
Therapy,
know, FGM.
which is not talked about in the African or Black community.
Yeah.
Like, these topics are
therapy.
to be talked about, you know.
talk about
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. So we'll be having these conversations weekly. So this is just one of many. So thank everybody for joining. If you haven't, like, comment, subscribe, follow all the pages. Stuff is going to be in the description. They gave you all their information. So with that, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys all on the next live.
Peace.
Thank you.
Have a blessed